Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I've been reading for the past 2 months, basically, because I've been a little bit absent. I thought that I would have more time to film a video every now and then, but as I've stated in a bunch of other videos, which you probably don't even care about, I just don't have enough time to record and edit when it comes to nursing school. It's a time suck, and it really sucks. I've not been reading as much as I usually do. I've been rereading a lot more books than I usually do, but I finally have a chance to sit down and talk with you guys about the books that I actually have read during January and February since it's all over. So this is going to be kind of a little bit different. Instead of like a weekly wrap up where I talk about every single book that I've read in January and February. So I'll start off with the books that I like the most and then mention books that I like the least in the past 2 months and touch on the ones that are kind of like in between. But yeah, also just like life update, the past 2 months have been a little bit crazy. Like I said, school has definitely become a time suck for me. It's very hard to find time to actually sit down and talk about books. It's hard to even read books, honestly. I've been rereading a lot more than I usually do, which is also kind of like a good thing. When it comes to YouTube, I feel like I need to be reading new books that I haven't read before. And I feel a little bit cut off from the booktube and bookstagram community just because I don't have enough time to dedicate to it. But something really cool just happened. If you follow me on Instagram, then you'll know that I recently flew into LA to do something with Netflix. I can't really talk about it right now. It's going to come out kind of soon. I don't have a set date, but it'll be very exciting to actually talk to you guys about this. It's so cool. It's so cool, and it's also very lucky that it worked with my school schedule. Like, I was kind of mind blown. At first I was like, I'm gonna have to turn this down, but then it worked. It's crazy. Anyway, okay, let's talk about books. Let's talk about books. The books that I haven't talked about in so long. Let's see if I forget details. I probably will. All right, let's talk about my favorites. And a couple of these I actually have talked about before because I did do one weekly wrap up in the beginning of January. So I'm going to start off with my 6-star reads. I had 2 in the month of January, and Taken by the Horde King by Zoe Draven. I absolutely love this Horde King series. It's a sci-fi romance, and this was the latest one to come out. It kind of blew me away. I really loved it. I don't know if it was just like my mood, and I was like, yes, I'm really in the mood for this type of barbarian romance, sci-fi romance, but I love the setup for this one. It's my favorite of the series, I would say. So of course you should kind of read it in order because there's some things going on in the world that you need to be up to speed on, and there's different races that live on this planet of Dakar. Our Horde Kings are kind of like Dothraki if you watch Game of Thrones, and they're really cool, known for being a little bit brutal. We have our humans who are kind of refugees on this planet, and also there's like this other race of beings called the Gurtons, and they're like not so great. And now that there's this curse on this land, this like red mist fog, and it has a lot to do with the previous book. But our heroine is a human, and she is part of one of the small human communities. They really don't know how to farm on this planet. It's very foreign to them. They don't know which animals they can kill because there's like very strict laws about how you can use the resources on this planet, and the Dakari kind of like enforce that. Our heroine Mina, they are under this mountain hiding out, and the leader for this human group, nobody really likes him. He is the biggest asshole I've read about in a long time. He's very cruel, and we get a hint that he kind of took this position by force. Mina is very beautiful, but she has a stammer. She stutters, and it turns off this horrible guy, which is kind of a blessing in disguise because it means that he doesn't come on to her. Well, he does kind of sometimes, but as soon as she stammers, he's like disgusted by it. So it saves her from being physically and sexually assaulted by him. But her best friend is actually kind of like playing into the leader's attraction to her so that she can sort of protect Mina. So there's a really big bond between Mina and her best friend. They've always had each other's backs, but there are these witches, these like sorceresses that come visit and basically tell the humans that they can get rid of this red mist, which it weakens a lot of people. When you go into the red mist, it actually like weakens you. It makes you very confused and stuff, except for Mina, which is one of like her secret little powers. But the witches tell the leader, if you want this mist to go away, and if you want to kind of like help us get the upper hand on this planet, then you have to deliver us a Horde King, and we have to do a human sacrifice, basically. Well, not a human sacrifice, but a Dakari sacrifice. And we'll be able to get rid of this, and your fortunes will rise with our fortunes. Since Mina is expendable, they decide to use her to lure a Horde king who has been tasked with watching the border between where the red mist is. So she goes there, and she hasn't really told anybody that she has this power to kind of create like a shield between her and the red mist so it doesn't touch her. And she really doesn't know what it is. It kind of just developed, and she's keeping it really close to the vest. And the only person she would really tell is her best friend, because everyone else in the community thinks that she's dim-witted. So they kind of like leave her alone and pity her. Well, our hero, Rune, he is the exact opposite type of leader as the human one. The human one is very selfish. He eats before all of his people. It doesn't matter if they're starving. It's all about him, and he just takes, and he rules by force and brutality and cruelty. But Rune, he is a true leader, and he wants his people first. His people are everything to him. That's what it is about being a Horde king. That is your actual like job, is to take care of your people, because hordes fail if they don't have a strong leader. And he has not taken his Markari, which is like a wife and also like your queen of the Horde, because his father was so in love with his mother, and when his mother died, his father kind of went a little bit insane. So he just thinks that that's not for me. I'm going to take somebody who's like a strong mate, and I'm not going to be in love with him, of course, denying the love. But when he's guarding this mist, he sees somebody in there, and he ends up by following into the red mist. He likes to test himself to see, how does the mist affect me? How long can I stay in it before it kind of like zaps me of my strength and everything? So he's like pushing his boundaries. He doesn't want his soldiers to risk their lives, so he's putting his life on the line. Mina lures him in, and the sorceress has taught her this phrase in Dakari that basically says, like, I belong to you. That's the gist of it. I belong to you. I am your mate. He's like answering this call that is inside of him to these words. He reacts so strongly to them. And she actually pulls him towards the mountain. You can see her struggle, like she doesn't quite want to do this, but she does finally get him there, and he is captured. And so, of course, he feels absolutely betrayed, because this woman is claiming that she is his, and all of a sudden he's in the clutches of these humans. They have these special cuffs that the witches gave them that actually he can't break through, because normally Dakari can, like, they have super strength. But he can't break through these. But what they don't know is that his tail actually is a weapon, and they don't cuff that at all. So he's just like, stupid humans. I'm just going to wait them out and see what they want, discover more information, and then I'll make my escape. Well, Mina has the sense that everything that she's doing, it's wrong. She should not be doing this. So she visits him quite often, even when she gets like beaten for it. And that's how their story begins. I love it so much, because she does end up by helping him escape. And in turn, he says that now you're my prisoner. Turnabout's fair play, and now you belong to me, and I'll treat you like I was treated over there. But he doesn't treat her badly, and I just really love it. I just really love it, because she finds her strength, she finds her voice, and she finds a community that actually functions as a community instead of a group of browbeaten people who are ruled by a tyrant and a dictator. So I really love this. This was 6 stars for me. I want to reread it so bad, and I can't wait for the next book in the series. Okay, I'm not going to talk about this one for long, because I have already talked about it in my previous video, but Manacled, the Dryini fanfic that is so super long, and I didn't know if it was going to be worth it in the beginning because it was so long. But yeah, it broke me, and it was beautiful and heartbreaking and a little bittersweet, but I loved it. And it does have an HEA at the end. And I just had to mention it again because it was a 6-star read for 2022. Next, I read The Tyrants Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. This is the first book that I've read by Kate C. Wells, and this was recommended to me by Nalika from Libra Lady. I love a good shifter romance. It's no surprise. I love a good shifter romance, and this one had an interesting premise. Killian is the alpha of this group, and we get a sense that shifters are kind of like a new thing. They're newly out in the open in like the human community, but they have like their own insular communities where they kind of stay out of human affairs. And Killian is the alpha, but the previous alpha was very old school. Women didn't have like a lot of rights in this pack, so Killian's slowly been changing things. It's still not great. Unmated females are not allowed to have like their own money. They can't go anywhere by themselves. They have to serve in basically like the dining hall where everyone gathers for the evening meal. And there's lots of elders who think that they should go back to the old way of thinking. So Killian kind of rules with an iron fist, and our heroine Una has actually been in an accident when she was younger and her leg didn't heal, so her leg's like really ravished and she is looked at like a cripple in the community and looked down on. So she's doing her normal job, serving dinner, when all of a sudden she starts feeling like hot and uncomfortable. And then when she looks at Killian, the alpha, who she's really never paid attention to, they grew up, they're about the same age, they've always known about each other, but they obviously don't run in the same circles. He's the alpha and she is just a lowly lone female who's unmated, who doesn't really have any rights. And when she sees this other female like sit on his lap, something breaks free of her. So she finally is able to shift. She's never shifted into a wolf before. It was very confusing for her, these feelings, because she's never felt them before. She has the sense that Killian is her mate. And she knows that it's crazy even to think that she would be the mate of an alpha. And he even basically shoots her down, being like, would I mate with somebody like you? I don't think so. And he gets one of his men to throw her out the back door like trash, and she's naked. So like he has a lot of groveling to do, and this is exactly how Nalika pitched it to me, that the hero rejects his mate in a very public way, and the whole book is him groveling and getting back into her good graces. And I enjoyed this grovel so immensely because he had a long way to go, and I was like, how is he gonna make it up? Because he embarrassed her in front of everybody, made her feel like the lowest of the low. And she's actually such a good person. She takes care of the other unmated females. She's secretly running a business where she would sell like honey and stuff, and now she's running this like mushroom ring where she sells high-end mushrooms to humans, which she's not even supposed to be interacting with. She's not even supposed to drive. So she was taught by this local shifter slash witch. And I'm wondering if this is like a spin-off from another series. I honestly haven't looked that deeply into this. It is the first book in the 5 Pax series, but I'm wondering if this world, Kate C. Wells has written in this type of world before. Anyway, I digress. I'm just thinking aloud at this point. This is going to be a very long video. I know it. I've talked so much and it's only been 2 books. So yeah, our hero Killian gets a sense that something's wrong. Something's wrong. Now he can't stop thinking about Una. Why? Oh no, it's just protective urges. He just wants to make sure that she's okay, all that jazz. And he's slowly starting to realize that Una is his mate and he treated her terribly and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And it is awesome. It is so awesome. I love the way that they're kind of like working together to change the pack dynamics, to bring them into the 21st century and just change the way that the pack thinks about like hierarchy and an individual's worth in the pack itself. So anyway, I just really loved it. Fantastic. 5 stars. I kind of want to give it 6 stars because I just really loved it so much. But anyway, I gave it 5 stars. We'll see about it. I might change a couple books to 6 stars depending on how I feel about them at the end of the year. The next one is Falling Like Stars by Eve Casey. This was our January Patreon exclusive review. So our patrons actually voted on books. This one was selected and I loved it so much. It was such an interesting, I've never read anything like this. So there's this big company called Orbit All that is based outside of California, and they're looking to create this like experience where, think of it like Disneyland. You would go to Orbit All to be able to get on a spaceship and be able to go out in space, just like a normal high luxury vacation experience. And our heroine Elle, she has worked for a large resort for a number of years. She is recruited by the CEO of this company, and she would be like the director of like experience, he said. She would curate exactly how this would work, the hotel, the guest experience. Like she is going to handcraft every little detail that would go into this type of thing. And of course, the CEO also needs to hire a pilot, so he ends up by hiring Chen Lu, who was an astronaut for the Chinese military. And this is a really big opportunity for Chen. He's always wanted to go to the West, and he immediately accepts the position. He has a younger sister who's disabled, and he's hoping that he can get a permanent position, get a visa, and stay there and bring his sister over there. And I will say that Chen's character is so adorable. He's so adorkable. He's kind of like a little bit cocky. He has like a cocky pilot attitude, but he's also kind of a little scruffy. He always like wears his little beanie. He's smiling all the time, beaming. And when he first meets Elle, he like rubs her the wrong way. It feels like a very middle school, I want to tug on your pigtails because I think you're cute, and I think their interactions are really adorable. So definitely not enemies to lovers, just kind of like coworkers who kind of like have this fun banter with each other. And of course there's an attraction. At first they don't want to do anything about it because they are coworkers, but eventually it's just kind of like, we'll just scratch an itch. And yeah, so there's definitely a conflict. And I thought that this was a really well done conflict. The way that Chin was torn between his feelings for Elle and also his feelings of duty for his family, and it was like amazing. So anyway, I gave this book 5 stars and I just loved it so much. The Rake Appreciation Society reviewed Ravishing the Heiress by Sherry Thomas, which this was my first book by Sherry Thomas that I've read, and I really loved it. I wasn't able to attend the live show, and I know that this book was kind of a little bit polarizing. People weren't very happy with Fitzhugh and the way that he treated Millie, because this is a married couple, not really marriage in trouble, kind of marriage in trouble. So Millie and Fitzhugh, they were married basically because of, you know, a marriage contract. I think she was actually engaged to the previous heir to his earldom. Look, guys, details fuzzy a little bit, but I love Millie and Fitz so much. But yeah, I can't remember if he's like an earl or a viscount or whatever, but he's titled, and his estate needs money. So she was previously engaged to the guy who held the title before him. Whenever that guy died, she automatically had to marry Fitzhugh. Fitzhugh is in love with somebody else, and so to save his estate, he does end up by marrying Millie, but he doesn't love her. He's still stuck on his childhood sweetheart who was like his first kiss and all that. So they've been married for a number of years, and recently his first love, who eventually had gotten married, had kids, her husband dies, and he's thinking that he can take up with her again, that now he can actually have the woman who he's always wanted in the first place. What he doesn't know is that Millie, his wife, has been in love with him, fell in love with him after they worked well together to save the estate. Millie had lots of ideas, and they really found their way into this beautiful friendship. But of course, Millie feels more for Fitz, and Fitz has no idea about it. And her longing for him is so heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. And it was just like you wanted to shake Fitz and be like, why don't you realize what a great thing that you have going, and you're ruining it because you want to be with your first love who you haven't even been around for a number of years. So anyway, it was good. It was the right level of angst for me. So I enjoyed that one a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars. But then I went on to read the next one, which is Tempting the Bride. And this is about Fitz's younger sister, Helena. And we get a little hint that Helena is scandalous. She's been caught with a married man, which is like unheard of. And her family's really trying to protect her reputation, making sure that she spends time abroad away from him. But she's come back recently, and her family are really trying to like group around her, making sure that she doesn't get herself into trouble again. Well, Fitz's best friend is David, and he has always had a thing for Helena, but outwardly he seems to loathe Helena. They've always had this very like head-butting relationship ever since he became friends with Fitz. But secretly he's pining after her and wants to protect her reputation. So whenever she's putting it on the line again, trying to dodge her babysitters, people that her siblings have put to watch her, she's trying to dodge them so that she can secretly meet up at a hotel with her love. David ends up by following her and rescuing her when her lover's wife's sister, there's a busybody relative around there that wanted to catch them in the act to prove that the husband was being unfaithful. Well, if David busts in the room and says like, you need to go hide in that other room, and I'm going to act like it was me that she was meeting. So now they're forced into a marriage, Helena and David. And she doesn't like this at all. She doesn't want to be married to him. She is lamenting that she's being forced into the situation, but it does force them to actually hang out. David has to change his tactic because his whole deal was to snipe at Helena and kind of push her away. But now if he wants a successful marriage, like this is his chance. He needs to change his attitude towards her. And like it's so hard because for so many years they've been butting heads, and he doesn't know how to change at first, but slowly he starts letting her in, seeing the man he is underneath all like the bluster. And his daughter, he does have this daughter, B, and it's so beautiful, their relationship, because she has OCD and also a little bit of like social anxiety, and the way that he deals with her. I wish we kind of had more scenes with David and Bee because that was a beautiful father-daughter relationship. So anyway, I really love this one. I liked it a little bit more than Ravishing the Heiress, so I give it 5 stars. Then I read Entreat Me by Grace Draven. Wow, very shiny cover. Okay, Entreat Me, I'm just gonna pop it up right here. I love this Beauty and the Beast retelling. I have been wanting to read Entreat Me for a long time. I have, I think, one more book that I actually physically own by Grace Draven, Master of Crows, that I need to read. The heroine, Louvain, I always say her name wrong. I couldn't listen to the audio. It was on Anyplay, but I didn't really love the narrator's voice, so I did end up, I have like all the formats of Entreat Me. I have the ebook and I have the physical book, and then of course I had access to the audio from Anyplay. So I decided to read this on my Kindle, which worked out much better for me. It's so funny how if you just don't connect with a narrator's style or their voice or their choices that they make for the characters, how the characters sound, it can throw off the whole entire book. And as soon as I picked it up and started reading it myself and had my own voices in my head for the characters, it works out so much better. So Louvain is actually a widow, and she had a husband who was an undertaker, basically like a mortician. Her father is a merchant, and after her stepmother died, which is her younger sister's mother, she kind of like had the reins on the business, and her father is a little bit of a spendthrift. He takes risky business ventures that never really pan out, and so their money is running out. Well, there's this local guy that's sniffing after her sister, and she's just like, there's no way that I'm gonna let this man marry my sister. He is horrible, he's disgusting, and I wouldn't do that to my sister. Well, her sister is in love with this other guy anyway, and he's like really super hot, but also very mysterious. It's like, where have you come from? Who are you? Cinia does not care where Gavin comes from, just knows that she's in love with him, and he says his family is all rich and stuff. Louvain kind of has this conversation with Cinia saying, your head's always in the clouds, I'm the practical one, and we can't just trust him. And it makes Cinia a little bit defensive because she's just like, you don't trust me to know my own mind, to be smart about this. I have an opportunity to save our family, and I think it lies with Gavin. So she ends up by sneaking away in the middle of the night with Gavin. And there is a really cool, kind of like dark and twisty prologue to this, where this king named Ballard has this wife who loathed him, hated him, and she's dying in childbirth. After she delivers a son, which he names Gavin, he visits her, and on her deathbed, she curses him and says, like, this isn't even your son. This is my lover's son. But Ballard doesn't care. This is the son that he's always wanted and waited for. He's gonna love him no matter what. But this curse that she puts on him has a huge part to play in our book. So Ballard and Gavin, as long as they're in like the castle, which is like, I forget the name of the castle, as long as they're there, they age very slowly. Like everything around them ages very slowly. They've been around for a couple hundred years, and when Cinia leaves this enchanted scroll that basically helps Louvain follow her, she ends up at this castle, and she's just like, I'm not leaving. She has to be chaperoned. This is really sketchy. And when she meets Ballard, he's all cloaked and he's hidden because apparently he has this very beastly appearance, and he has claws. And their first meeting is so interesting because it's such a different reaction. Her reaction to Ballard's appearance is kind of a little subdued. Like she's not freaking out that he looks beastly in appearance. She is a very formidable woman who doesn't easily get shaken. She's seen a lot of stuff with her first husband. She actually describes this one scene where she went with her husband to pick up a body and it like kind of exploded everywhere. It was disgusting. But anyway, I love her attitude so much, and I love the friendship that she and Ballard form, because they're like basically chaperoning these randy teenagers who are making calves eyes at each other and also getting like too close. And Louvain is a little bit of an overprotective sister. She can be a little bit too much, but she has growth in that area, letting Cinia, whatever, kind of spread her wings, make her own decisions and stuff. So anyway, of course the curse has to be broken, because there's a little part that actually has to do with Gavin. Gavin also is going to be touched by the curse. So I'm not going to spoil any of that, but I will say that this was a very interesting Beauty and the Beast retelling, by far my favorite I've read as a romance novel. Then I read Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. Again, Nalika from Liber Lady. She had messaged me asking me if I ever read Lucy Score. I said yes. I've read 3 books previously by Lucy Score, and they really didn't do anything for me. It wasn't that I hated them, but just I could have gone without reading them. It didn't wow me. And I've DNF'd a couple of her other ones as well. But Nalika was raving about this one because she received an ARC. So I was like, okay, at least I'll just try it out. I'll just read a couple chapters, see what I think about it, and if I don't like it, I don't have to read it. Setting boundaries for yourself, that's important. Anyway, so I started reading this book and I ended up by really liking it. At first I was just kind of like, humor's a little ham-fisted. There's like lots of like punchy lines right after each other. It's almost like doesn't let up, but overall I ended up by really loving this book. I gave it 4.5 stars, which is the highest I've ever rated Lucy Score. I think it's definitely a worthwhile read. I'm very glad that I read it. So we have our heroine Naomi. She goes into this small town called Knockabout. Is it Knockabout? Damn it. And this is one of the books that I read more recently. And I still can't remember everything. Okay, I think it's Knock 'em Out. Knock 'em Out? Because apparently this town likes to settle their disputes with like a good little brawl, and then they're done. They're over it. We've hit each other, and now everyone's square. And it has a little tie-in to the hero as well. So I'm not there yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Naomi goes to the small town, and her sister has texted her. This estranged sister who she's always in trouble. She hasn't really talked to in a long time. Naomi, we discover she's kind of running away from her wedding. She's a runaway bride. She even still has like the flowers in her fancy little hair. And when she goes into this diner where her sister said, hey, come meet me over here, she sees her sister's picture taped up on the wall. Because nobody wants her in this diner, she creates trouble. So the owner of the diner just kind of like, get out. I told you don't come in here. And she's like, I am not that person on the wall. That is my twin sister. I'm Naomi. So her introduction into this town is tinged by the fact that this town hates her sister. She is such a troublemaker. And then our hero makes his grand entrance into the diner as well after she like squared away with the owner being like, I'm not Tina. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can see the resemblance, but you're not Tina at all. So let me serve you a big cup of coffee. It looks like you need it. While our hero busts in to kind of replay this whole scene, telling Tina off, saying like, I'm not gonna let you cause any havoc anymore. You've done enough in this town. Get out right now. And Naomi is of course very insulted by the high-handed manner that Knox is swinging about, and she snaps back at him. He finally clues into the fact that this is not Tina and this is somebody totally different. But of course, when they walk outside, Naomi realizes that her car has disappeared. And of course, Knox is just kind of like, you misplaced your car. And she's like, no, it was parked right there. And then he makes a connection that, oh, your sister told you to meet you here. She knew you were going to be here. I'm sorry to tell you, but your sister stole your car. And Naomi knows that her sister's really bad, but she's also just very defensive because of Knox's attitude towards her. So she's trying to handle it on her own. But apparently, Knox is kind of a big deal in this town. And at first, we don't know why, but he has a lot of connections. He brings her to the police station, which has like his name on it, but he's not a cop. I don't really want to spoil why he has such a big influence in this town, because you kind of gradually get to that point with him, and the journey is very, very sweet. So he's reluctantly escorting Naomi all over town, and when they finally get back to her motel room, the door is a little bit ajar, and he's like, did you leave your door open? And she's like, of course I didn't. They go in, her hotel room is trashed, her money is gone, her laptop's gone, and there's a tiny teenage girl laying down in her bed. This is her niece that she didn't know that she had, named Waylay. So her sister Tina just dumped her teenage daughter onto her sister Naomi and told Waylay that I'll be back like later. Don't know when, but later. So now Naomi is in this new town. She has no money, she has no car, no job, because she just ran away from her wedding and job. Her fiance's family owned the business that she worked at. So now she's out of a job. Anyway, and Knox reluctantly is the one to help her find a place to live, because Tina's place is just like not great. She's been evicted from it anyway. So he drives her to this estate, and it used to be like this lodge that his grandparents owned, and his grandmother still lives there. He has his little log cabin as well. And then there's a tiny little beautiful cottage, and like Waylay's reaction to walking into this beautiful little cutesy cottage being like, we get to live here. Like, this is the nicest place she's ever stayed before. And it's like a cutesy little cottage, and it's just like very magical and dreamy. And Naomi's just like, I have this responsibility. I usually have to pick up the pieces that my sister just leaves scattered about. I don't want to let my parents know because they'll be so worried. And the way that Naomi's dealing with all this, these feelings of, oh my God, I'm in over my head. what am I gonna do? She doesn't want to accept handouts, but she kind of has no choice when it comes to providing a safe place for Waylay. So the townspeople are very nice. She just doesn't like Knox, and Knox is an asshole character. Like he takes grumpy to the nth degree, but I kind of liked the fact that he was so unlikable. Like Lucy Score went hard with the grump sunshine trope, and I'm not mad about it in the least. And I kind of like that he was stubborn to a fault for a very long time in this book. So anyway, I really loved it. I gave this book 4.5 stars. Then I read The Plan by Carla Sorensen. It's the second book in her Washington Wolves spin-off series. It's like the next generation. In the previous book, The Lie, we meet Faith and Lydia Pearson. They're the daughters of Washington Wolves royalty, basically. Their dad used to be a player for the team, and their mom is the owner of the team. And at the very end of The Lie, Lydia gets in a car wreck because she's a social media influencer. My battery's gonna die. I'm gonna change it real quick. So Faith has had some problems with stalkers, and this was actually a paparazzi who was trying to get too close to her car and ends up by causing her to wreck. So she was in the hospital. She wasn't seriously injured. She just has like a cast on, but it really shook her up. It turned her world upside down, made her feel very vulnerable for the first time. She was such a bold personality before this wreck, and then now she's a little bit reclusive and she's staying in her parents' basement. She's not going outside. She kind of refuses to do it. She's taking online classes because her main goal by being a social media influencer was to actually make her own money to fund her schooling, and eventually she wants to take over owning the team and be in her mom's place. And she is a encyclopedia of facts about football and players' stats. Like she is, I love the fact that she's so girly, and you would never look twice at a girl like Lydia, the outward image that she projects, and be like, yes, this girl knows everything to know about football and all the players that can be drafted. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their stats and stuff like that? You would never know that just by looking at Lydia, because you kind of like assume that she's this vapid social media influencer with like feathers for brains, but she's not. She's very smart. So her parents decide that they're going to do something about this because this is very unhealthy. They hire a former player, Eric Wilder, to be her bodyguard and drive her around because she has some PTSD about being in a car and being away from the house in general. She's losing out contracts, and her parents, of course, didn't love her social media influencer lifestyle because of like the stalkerish fan mail that she would get, but also they don't want to see their daughter suffer like this. They want her to move past the trauma, work through it, get some help, go to a therapist. And Eric is like this beefy, muscular, beautiful man, and it's an age gap romance. If I didn't say that before, I don't think I did. It's an age gap romance. I think it's about 10 or 11 years between them. And I love how immediately Lydia is just like, oh my god, he's super hot, but she's also spitting mad that her parents have done this to her. She refuses. She's like, no, absolutely not. You're not going to babysit me. I don't need it. I'm fine. I don't need any help. But before he leaves, he takes her outside. He's just like, let me talk to you, and just doesn't treat her like she's a child or anything. Just lays it all out there and says like, your parents are worried for you. I will not interfere with your life. I'm just here to chauffeur you around, to get you to the places that you need to be. So she takes a while and she thinks on it, and she eventually is like, okay, maybe it won't be so bad. You can bring me to go to this event or whatever. And it's like it's baby steps. At first, she only uses him to go to like drive-thrus, to go to McDonald's and go get a little bit of breakfast and like straight back to the house. So baby steps. And I really love how Eric is so patient with her, but also the attraction between them is a lot. And I really do love it. We're also introduced to Eric's family eventually. We get to go to his hometown, and we discover why he left his football career, because even though he had an injury, it was something that he could definitely bounce back from, but he decided to leave football, and everybody's just kind of like, what the hell? And he doesn't like to talk about why that is, but it has something to do with his ex-wife. So he has to go back to his family's branch, and he ends up by bringing Lydia with him, and we're introduced to all of his family, and it's been confirmed that Carla Sorensen will do a spin-off series with his family, and I'm very excited about that. But anyway, I really like the chemistry between these two. I do like The Lie slightly more, but The Plan was really good sports romance. I think Carla Sorensen's really good at writing sports romances, of course, but also romances that aren't necessarily small town, but they have this intimacy between the characters. Their chemistry is so good. and they can be doing these mundane things, but you feel like they're so momentous. Like, I don't know, she's just really good at really making you invested in these characters and their relationship, which I appreciate. Then I read Splendid by Julia Quinn, which was the historical Hellions pick for January, and I really loved it. I listened to this one on Anyplay, and I will say, I don't know how I pushed through this audio because I hated the way that the narrator spoke. Every voice that she did for women, any woman that was in the book, they sounded so whiny and just awful, and I hated it so much. And I don't know how I pushed through the book. I didn't even like the way that she did the hero's voice either. So anyway, the audio, I don't recommend it. But it was on Anyplay. It was free-ish. I always think of Anyplay as free. It's not technically, it's a subscription service, but damn is it a bang for your buck because you just pay a flat fee and you have no limits on the amount of books that you listen to during that 3-month period that you pay for. Again, I wasn't able to attend the live show for this one, but I really loved Alex as a character, even though he was a little bit high-handed. And I definitely love the setup for this one because Emma is an American heiress and she's visiting her cousins in London. Well, she kind of like wants one more day of freedom before she has to go to like balls and parties, and the cook was out of eggs or something, so she decides she's gonna go dressed in maid's uniforms to go pick up the eggs. So she goes and she ends up by saving this little boy who is about to be like run over by a carriage, and she saves him. Well, lo and behold, this is the nephew of our hero. And he is very struck with Emma, thinks she's just a little housemaid, wants her really bad, kind of comes on to her, wants to see her when he dropped her off at this house that he's familiar with. He knows her aunt and uncle, but of course, she's pretending to be this maid, and he's just like, how can I get her in my bed? Well, he decides to attend the ball that they're hosting for their niece. He doesn't really interact with society this way. And when he gets there, he discovers that Emma is not, in fact, a maid, that she is an American heiress. Again, I can see why people don't like Alex's character, but in general, this book just really worked for me. I think that they both had some really strong personalities, which I always feel like it's kind of a must that the heroine be just as strong as the hero. If your hero is going to be a bit of an asshole, they have to be able to stand up and take it and dish it back. And I feel like Emma did. So I ended up by really liking it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Now this one I've talked about before, but I just had to mention Sustained by Emma Chase, which was a really great single parent / guardian romance. Our heroine, Chelsea, becomes the guardian of her brother's 6 children after he and his wife are in a car accident, and fate brings this lawyer to her doorstep when one of her nephews is getting into trouble, and he just kind of naturally falls into their life. And it's really beautiful, even though Jake is like so stubborn, and he was a little hot and cold. So I did give this one 4.5 stars, but there's a novella, a follow-up called Sidebarred, and it's just a little catch up with Jake and Chelsea. So they've been together for like a couple years. And not only do we get an update with Jake and Chelsea possibly wanting to add on to their family, like they already have 6 kids. The youngest, like 2 or 3, call them mom and dad because they were so young when their parents actually died. And they're thinking like, can we have another baby? Do we want to add on to our family? So that was like a really interesting exploration of their feelings. But also, not only do we get that little story, but there's like an epilogue that catches you up with the kids like 10 years later. So all the kids that we were familiar with and Sustained, they've grown up and started their own families. And there's just kind of like this callback to the very first book. And like, it's so good. It's so freaking good. I love these books so much. They're so great. So I gave that one 5 stars. This novella deserves all the 5 stars. It was amazing. Okay, 2 more of my favorites. This is going to be a very long video. I'm going to have to try to cut this down. Monroe by Cressley Cole. Everyone has been anxiously anticipating this one. I do not have my physical copy yet. I just hadn't gotten around to actually ordering any books recently, but I did buy the actual Kindle edition, and it was so awesome to be back in the Immortals After Dark world. So amazing to follow up with Monroe's story after having that teaser at the end of McCreeve, which McCreeve is one of my favorites of the series. And there's just something about these Lycae that just makes me swoon, and I love them so much. So poor Monroe, he's captured by these warlocks. They're into some pretty bad stuff. They perform these human sacrifices so that they can travel through time. And in order to take control of Monroe's wolf, because his wolf is very powerful, he's known for his control over his wolf. So they have to trick him into giving up control, being able to shift so that they can take control of the wolf. Because the only way that they can take control of his inner beast is if he actually changes and shifts. And he's been holding out for a while. The whole time that he's been captured, nothing that they've done has been able to push him over the edge to the point where he would change. Well, they finally found something to push him over that edge, and it is his fated mate. They had to go back in time to I think it's the early 1900s, and his fated mate is Kearney, and they bring her forward, inject her with this poison or something. And the only way that Monroe can save her is by biting her. And so he bites her against her will. And she's like, I will hate you forever. If you do this, I don't want to be a monster. She's also kind of like a Lycae hunter in her time. So kind of spoiler alert for how this book starts off. She does not survive. His wolf gets taken over because he had to shift in order to bite her. And now these warlocks have control of his wolf and are able to force him to do his bidding. This is bad. This is very, very bad. They force him to throw the body of his fated mate into this vat of acid. It's very traumatic. It's awful. I'm just oh my God, Monroe, putting him through so much already. And it's just the first couple of chapters. And Monroe's just I need to have the will to break through this spell that is controlling me. And what more motivation do I need than the fact that there's a chance that I can go back in time and save my mate from being captured by these warlocks? And so that's his mission. Break through, go back in time, get a warlock to open up a little portal and try to save Kearney. And he has to convince her to come to safety, but the warlock stole her from a wedding. She was getting married to one of her best friends. So that's the whole setup of this book. There's lots of complicated inner workings that have to do with time travel and changing your destiny, changing your future and fate and all that jazz. And I really did enjoy this one. By no means did I dislike it at all, but I only gave it 4.5 stars. I wasn't quite as invested in Kearney and Monroe as I had been in previous characters. I thought that Kearney was a very interesting character, but she's not one of my favorite ones. She's a badass, but I guess it's not that Kearney's not my favorite, but their relationship wasn't one of the standouts when you're comparing it to the rest of the series, which is 14, 15, more than that books long. I have my god tier books in the series, and Monroe didn't quite make it up. I wouldn't say that's in my top 5. I don't know. I'm gonna have to re-rank all the Immortals After Dark to stick Monroe in there. I'm gonna have to look at my list. I recently done a video where I reread the entire series and I ranked every single one of them. So I don't know where Monroe fits in it. I'm gonna have to think on it. And lastly, I have A Touch of Stone and Snow, which is on my other bookshelf over there, and I don't feel like going and get it, so we're just gonna pop it up right here. I finally read A Touch of Stone and Snow. I'd started this book right whenever it came out, actually. And I got about halfway done with it before I had to stop because of something else. I either had to read another book for the podcast or I have no idea. But I never finished it. And the next book in the series is supposed to be released sometime this year. So I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to go back into A Touch of Stone and Snow. I started from the very beginning, and this book is on Anyplay. So I did listen to the audio, which is really great. And it's very different. It's very different from A Heart of Blood and Ashes. And I will say, because I did like this book, I gave it 4.5 stars. No, I gave it 4 stars. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. And I will say that it's kind of unfair that I gave it 4 stars because it is still a very wonderful standout book. But it's just, it suffers for being the second book in this series when the first book in the series was mind-blowing. Mind-blowingly good. And it's just hard because I don't enjoy it as much as I do the first one. So whenever I'm considering my ratings for it, I kind of have to take that into account. But it's better than the majority of other fantasy books that I've read and rated 4 stars too. So I don't know. It's hard. Ratings are hard. But this relationship, it's not like Madoc and Yven's enemies to lovers relationship. This is a second chance romance, childhood lovers dynamic, and it's very sweet. The world's very complicated. I had this feeling like I was reading the Canterbury Tales because there was just a bunch of different characters. They were on this journey. They met some more on the road. So I feel like this book is a little too complicated to break down in this type of video, and I've already gone on for so long. I still have to talk about the books that I didn't really care for. So I'm just going to leave it at, I really did enjoy this book. I think the journey was really great. A standout character for this book was the Snow Cat. He is very intelligent and I loved him so much. He's probably, I don't know how it's pronounced, but I call him Cabe. But I really love the Snow Cat character, probably more than I liked any of the characters in this book. And that's not to say that I didn't like Arax or Lizanne, because I really did. But yeah, very different, a little bit of a slow burn, a little bit of a quieter journey, but it was interesting. And I'm very much looking forward to the next one. I still have to read The Beast of Blackmoor or whatever as well, which is a shorter book. I don't think it's a novella, but it's shorter. All right, let's talk about my least favorites. So none of these books are below a 3-star, so they're really not terrible. I don't hate them. But when I look back on all the books that I read in January and February, these are the ones that I did rate the lowest, and I kind of had the most to say about them in terms of my disappointment, because maybe I was anticipating them. I had a little bit of expectations and it didn't deliver in the way that I hoped that they would. The first one I'm going to talk about is Headcase by Onley James. Now, I have loved this series so much. I think my favorite's still Psycho. I loved Unhinged, but Psycho still has my heart. And Headcase just didn't really do it for me. And it really was the dynamic between the two characters. I just wasn't feeling Asa and Zane. I just wasn't feeling their relationship at all. And when you don't feel the chemistry for a book that's set up like this, because this entire series is based on this instill of attraction between a psychopath killer, serial killer, and like a regular Joe person who just stumbles upon the serial killer and witnesses them doing something. And that's just what happens with Zane. He's an investigative journalist, or at least he's trying to be. His mother is freaking terrible. He was a disappointment to his, mostly his mother. And there's a bit of a mystery that has to do with Zane's brother who had died. He committed suicide, but now there's reason to believe that it's kind of part of this game. And there's like this movie, God, what is the movie called that has like a similar premise to this? I've never watched it, but just by watching the trailer for it, I was like, huh, that's kind of similar to that movie. I think Emma Roberts was in it. Hold on. Nerve. That's what I'm talking about. I've never watched it, but it's basically kind of like a truth or dare situation or whatever, and people can die. Anyway, so that's what the premise of this book was. But from the very beginning, when Asa and Zane meet and hit it off, I just wasn't believing their relationship, and that is a huge part of this book. I also really wasn't into the type of kink that they were into. Not to say that I haven't liked books that had a little bit of rough play and all that, but it's hard to enjoy it when you don't enjoy the characters. And that's all I'll say. So I just didn't like it. I hope that I like the next book in the series, which I'm assuming is going to be the twin brother, Avi's book. But yeah, this one was just a little bit of a disappointment. And it also kind of suffered because I liked Damaged, which was a novella that was recently released before the release of Headcase. I love Damaged so much. I actually would have preferred a longer book for Damaged's characters, who they both appear in this book. Next is Claimed by Cupid by Dana Islay. I don't know if I'm saying that last name right, but in December I read her Dipped in Holly novella and I really loved it. It was like a good little smutty holiday romance, and Jen was the one who told me that the author was going to be continuing these characters' stories and hitting on the major holidays to continue telling their stories, which was really cool. So the next one was Valentine's Day, so we have a little, Cupid theme there. The problem that I had with this book was the plot was simple and dipped in Holly. Holly got dumped by her boyfriend during a Christmas party when they were out at a bar, and she ends up by crying in the bathroom, but the owner of that bar, Nick, who looks like Santa Claus, she would dress up as Mrs. Claus, comforts her, and they end up by starting this relationship, and they have like a kinky little one-night stand that turns into, hey, maybe we could keep seeing each other thing. And I thought it was really sweet, a sweet erotic novella. And I was kind of looking for more meat in their story, even though I knew that this was just going to be a novella. But this whole book, it's really just erotica. It's just them banging all the time, which is fine, but also I just wish that there was something more going on. And I guess you can say it's like they take the next step in their relationship, which is like officially becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't feel like that's a spoiler, but it felt kind of anticlimactic. Like they just went from, this book starts during New Year's and ends around February, and I just think that more could have been done, like getting to know them as people rather than just their kinky little escapades that they went through, which is uninteresting to me. So I gave this book 3 stars because there just wasn't much going on for it. So I would have preferred for it to just be left at Dipped in Holly because I like that better. Next, I read The Beasts of Clan Kincaid by Lily Blackwood. And this was our February pick for Patreon. And I really did like the setup for this one. It's a Highland medieval romance. Our hero, Neil, his family, the Kincaids, were betrayed by 2 other clans who were invited. And in the middle of the night, these 2 clans, the McLaren and the Allwins, turned on Neil's father. And Neil's father was just like, I'm gonna surrender and I need you and your brothers to get away from this. So his like trusted soldiers took the 3 kids away and they were all separated. And then Neil finds out that the McLarens and the Allwins murdered his father, murdered his mother, and also the 3 boys who were standing in place of Neil and his brothers. So Neil has no idea if his brothers are dead or alive because they're all separated for a better chance of survival, and one day they could reclaim their Kincaid lands. So this is his mission. He has become this mercenary for hire. He has a very prominent reputation as a soldier, the Beast. And he's back on his family lands. He kind of has an in with the McLarens because he saved like one of the advisors one night at an inn when it was under attack. And so he is being invited to the castle, which is why he's so close and he's able to witness something go down with the daughters of Clan McLaren, which he has no idea that they're the daughters of his enemy. But he does witness these women who are walking down to the river, and he sees one of them slap what he thinks is a serving maid, which is actually our heroine, Elspeth, the eldest daughter of the McLaren. Elspeth and her stepmother, who's the same age as her, do not get along. Bridget is terrible. Elspeth is chasing after her younger sister, Catherine, who is worried for her puppy, who's close to the river. The puppy falls in, and Catherine falls in, so Elspeth jumps in to go save her sister, and they both get rescued by Neil. And eventually the puppy does get rescued too. We don't know. We think the puppy does die, but he doesn't. I just want to throw that out there for all the people who don't like to see, animals, sad animal scenes in their books. So just the puppy survives. So Neil saves both of the clan's daughters. They have like this spark of chemistry between each other. He thinks that she's made at first and then he gets corrected. So she is expected to make an advantageous marriage because the Allwins are kind of like making waves saying that they deserve the Kincaid lands, that it should be theirs. And so the McLaren's like, we have to marry you off so that we can have some allies because our army isn't as strong as the Allwins. Neil just becomes this fixture in the castle. He is kind of like a guard. He starts giving advice to them, Clarence. So it's kind of like, he's a Trojan horse. He's in the midst of his enemy and they think that he's a friend, which I really love that aspect. But I didn't like the relationship. I didn't like the relationship between Neil and Elspeth. Originally I did, but Neil thought that he had to push her away, so he was very hot and cold, but she was too. If she saw something that she misinterpreted or she reacted in a way that he engineered it for her to react in a negative way to try to push her away, then she went like to an extreme level of like, oh, I can't trust you anymore, so I'm gonna go off and do this dangerous thing or stupid thing, and I'm not thinking clearly just because I'm so hurt about it. Yeah, there were just some things. I think both the characters behaved badly and it aggravated me. It was too much. It was too much up and down with the characters, and I didn't really like them together at the end because of all the things that they went through. But it wasn't a bad book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I am still interested in the next book in the series, which you can probably guess are about, Neil's long lost brothers. And I won't spoil that for you, but Juliet went on to read the next 2 books in the series and she said they get better. So book 2 is better than book 1 and book 3 is better than book 2. Unfortunately, these are the only books that this author has written. So that's all you get. You read these books and that's it. Then I read The Siren of Sussex by Mimi Matthews. I had the arc of this and I was really looking forward to it because I enjoyed the holiday novella, A Holiday by Gaslight, so much. It was low steam, no steam actually, but there were strong north and south vibes with A Holiday by Gaslight, and I just thought that Mimi Matthews was really good at writing a Victorian historical romance. And I was hoping, and I think that this book suffered because I had such expectations for it. I was hoping, since it was a full-length novel that she was publishing with Berkeley, if I remember correctly, that there would be a sex scene And I'm not saying that it needed to be like extremely explicit, but I will say there was 0 sex scenes in this book. 0. Not even like a glossed over fade to black scene. There was just nothing, nada. There was nothing at all. It was just sexual tension, and that's fine, but also lots of things didn't work for me in this book. The motivation of the heroine wanting to be this, not really a renowned equestrian, but she thought that since she didn't have a lot of money, she's in London because her uncle does have money and he's a little bit spacey, he's more of a scholar, won't really help her with like introduction to society. She thinks that she's kind of a plain Jane, and her best option in attracting a husband to help her family would be to make a splash in the park while she's riding her horse, because she is a good horsewoman, in a fantastic habit. So she's throwing all of her eggs in one basket. If I can have the greatest outfit and make my debut basically in the park on a horse, then I have a chance of being noticed in society. So this is her plan. But it doesn't really make sense much to me, because the reason why she has this idea is because the little gossip papers are writing about women who are wearing these beautiful habits riding in the park, but all the women who are mentioned are prostitutes. So I'm just like, I don't know, you're going to go to the same habit maker as all the prostitutes go to wear the clothes that they wear, and people have no idea who you are, so they're probably going to assume that you're a prostitute, because the only people who wear these very, very expensive looking outfits and make an impression are the prostitutes. So anyway, it didn't really make sense to me. And then of course she starts making friends with a bunch of wallflowers, so she's not even associating with the right people. And I just didn't think that Mimi Matthews handled this longer novel format very well, because it felt very disjointed. It felt like she was telling a bunch of different stories and she just kind of piecemealed them together. There's a plot to do with the heroine's older sister, who was originally supposed to make her debut in London, and she got disgraced. She pops in for like a second during the novel, and I just felt like it was such a weird thing to have, because the book could have done without that whole entire scene. It didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things if her sister showed up again or not, or we just mentioned her, that she was scandalous, and now it's up to our heroine to save the day. Then we have our hero, who is half Indian, and his cousin, who also helps him make the dresses. And he's dealing with a lot of prejudice of being an Indian in London society, trying to start his own business, trying to be taken seriously, avoiding being taken advantage of ladies who are propositioning him, but he can't offend them because these are his clients. So like lots of angsty stuff going on with our hero, which I really liked him. And then we had this whole occult thing happening. Apparently her uncle, who originally we think is just a scholar, is also interested in like spiritualist things. He likes to talk to ghosts. And his BFF, who's a duchess, ends up by sponsoring our heroine, and the duchess is also obsessed with talking to ghosts, and they all want to talk to Prince Albert. And I feel like this was thrown in as like this very real thing that actually happened in Victorian society. There was, Mimi Matthews has a whole author's note at the end of it, and she explains it. And I feel like in any other historical romance, if that was the major kind of humorous side plot going on, I would have enjoyed it. But again, it just felt really disjointed. There was very serious undertones, and then I just felt like all the balls, which included like spiritualist scenes, were just kind of silly but not funny. They were just silly, and I just didn't care for it at all. The friends that our heroine makes, all these wallflowers who are on the edges of society, it felt very like, I have to introduce these characters because I'm trying to write a series about wallflowers, and so here you go, here are my side characters. But I didn't really feel anything for these characters at all, so it was just a kind of a disappointment, honestly. It was just too much going on, none of it bad on its own, but thrown together, it really didn't make for a great read. So I only gave this book 3 stars. And then my last least favorite was A Brush with Love. And I didn't hate this book, but it also didn't do anything for me. Again, there was lots of side characters who I thought that just didn't do anything for the story. And I had trouble with the relationship between the 2 main characters. I do talk about this book in my weekly wrap-up that I did in the first week of January. I'll link that up here if you want to watch like a more detailed review of this. But yeah, that one was kind of disappointing to me. I thought it would be a cute premise, but yeah, it didn't work for me. Okay, other books of note that I did read. and were more like in the 4-star range, were Juniper Hill by Devney Perry. This is the second book in her Edens series, and I did really like it. This was a single mom romance. She's living in the hero's above garage apartment, and he didn't really agree to have her live there. His sister kind of agreed on his behalf, so it's not a grump and sunshine trope because the heroine is by no means a sunshine character. She is struggling with being a single mom. She feels like she's not a good mom. Her baby always cries with her, and there's this awful daycare worker who makes her feel like shit all the time, basically. So I felt so bad for the heroine, but also I really wish that there would have been a turning point where she started becoming emotionally stronger. She just felt defeated the entire book, and it was kind of depressing to read about, but I did like the dynamic between the hero and the heroine. He steps up to the plate. He's kind of like annoyed by her presence, but then eventually starts helping her because he sees how she's trying and falls in love with her and wants to be there for her. There was also a kind of side plot with her baby daddy that to me I felt like was weird. It was like thrown in. It was weird. I didn't love it. So I gave that book 4 stars. I am looking forward to the next one because it was a little bit hinted at the end of Juniper Hill. Then I read Hot Stuff by Max Monroe. Now Max Monroe, they're very prolific. They're an author duo, best friends, and they release books very quickly, and I don't always get to their newest releases. But I did like Hot Stuff's cover, and it is a firefighter romance, and I like firefighter romances. The first meeting between our hero and our heroine is that he needs to get a physical, and she gives him his physical. And so she just like, the beginning of the book is like, I have this dude's balls in my hands. So anyway, that's how they initially meet. And then he discovers that this hot doctor who he was kind of like been thinking about is the daughter of his chief, his fire chief. And he's a single dad. He has 2 twin children. And I just really liked their relationship. It was very cute. Not quite insta-lovey, but they definitely had chemistry, and it was just very sweet. Pretty low angst to do with their relationship. They had outside conflicts that I didn't feel were too angsty. So anyway, I really like this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then the last 2 are Fighting Gravity by Eve Casey. So this is the second book in that Orbit All series. I think it's actually called the All In series. And this is about like the CEO and the architect that's actually building the hotel at their little space experience orbital place. And this one was a little bit too angsty. The heroine had some trust issues, and it was hinted at that she had a really bad experience, like a previous relationship experience. And when it came to light what the situation actually was that made her so mistrusting, it was like, yeah, I might have slight trust issues after that, but also I thought it was going to be worse. Like I felt like the heroine could have gotten over what happened. So definitely not as good as the first book in the series. I only gave it 3.5 stars, but Frequency of Attraction, which is the last book, is a single dad romance. The hero is an astronaut. Well, he's a pilot, and he's Russian. And he has a daughter who he's never met before. He knows exists, but the baby mama has not let him see her. And she had been living in the States, so now that he's in California working at Orbit All, he's trying to get in touch with her. And the heroine, Quinn, who's the cousin of the CEO, she gets things done. And so they kind of like connect. Quinn is very businesswoman oriented, all about her job. She basically works 24/7, but her reaction to the hero kind of makes her realize that she needs to be taking time for herself, and she enjoys spending time with the hero. So they kind of like make a little connection. And I love how the hero helps her with her problem. Normally I don't love a plot that involves a woman who can't orgasm with men, because I find that every time it happens in a romance novel, the hero has no trouble bringing her to orgasm, but our hero had to work for it. Like, it was not just like, oh, we have such great chemistry and I can give you an orgasm where nobody else was able to, and it's so easy for me. It wasn't easy for the hero, so I really appreciated that. 4 stars for that one. All right, that is it. That's all my favorites and my least favorites. I left out the books that I reread and some of the ones that I had already reviewed in the first and only weekly wrap up that I did for 2022. I read 15 books in January and 15 books in February. I might, by the end of today, read 16 books for February because I'm in the middle of my reread, actually, for The House of Earth and Blood. Finally, I felt like I needed to reread House of Earth and Blood before I started reading the next book in the series, which is a whopper. Jesus, it's gonna take it, and it's taken me a long time to reread this one. But yeah, these are what I'm working on right now. So in the next video that I will be able to make, I'll talk about these, which may not be for quite a few weeks. We'll just see. I'll just pop in every once in a while with a random video of let's update you on all the books that I've read. Okay guys, woof, I feel like I've been here forever, and I actually have. I never said that I was a concise book reviewer because I'm not. I like to talk a lot, and I still feel like there was a lot that I left unsaid about these books, but again, I was trying to get through all of them. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and yeah, like I said, I don't know when the next one will be, but I know that some people have been requesting for me to do a bookshelf tour. So I think I'm going to try to do that as well. Maybe I can film that one tomorrow since it is a long weekend for me, and I might be able to get that one filmed, at the very least filmed, so that when I have some more free time, I can edit it. But there's so much stuff going on in March. I feel like you'll see a couple videos from me in March at the very least. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.